and thank you for joining us for another edition of our Straight Shooter podcast. I am Chris Jacobs, and I'm joined today by Joe Diaz, correct, of the Restoration Church in Brownsville?
That's correct.
And so can you tell me more about how Restoration Church came about? You mentioned just now that you're from California, and you actually made your way down to Texas.
Yeah, Restoration Church started back in El Centro, California, about 43 years ago. Originated out of El Centro, California, with our senior pastor Fernando Rivas Sr., Sister Ofelia Rivas. It's been about for 43 years, like I mentioned. Just the main focus target is helping drug addicts. Mm-hmm. Our senior pastor was a local man, a businessman in El Centro. His own business. He had his own company. When he found out that he had 2 sons that were drug addicts, and he knew at that moment that that the lifestyle of being having money and cars and houses, wasn't necessarily what was going to save his family, at that moment in time, and from that moment he said, what, I got to figure out another game plan in order to be able to help my family out. So that's when he came about, Imperial Valley Ministries. It's a branch out of Victory Outreach. Victory Outreach was very popular back in the Imperial Valley around that time. And, shift and changes came about through Victory Outreach. So, our senior pastor formed what is now known as Imperial Valley Ministries in El Centro, California, in the Imperial Valley. Yeah,
that's a really interesting story. And so you have an interesting background, too. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on as well, is I know you had some trouble when you were growing up with gangs, and you had an addiction problem yourself. Can you tell me about what led to that life and how that kind of formulates itself?
It's a funny, interesting story. My testimony. I didn't grow up, in poverty. I didn't grow up, in how would I say, the projects. I grew up down the street from the projects. Both my parents they worked. They both had jobs. I lived in a house. I was about 12 years old when I first started. I started about take my first hit of marijuana, drink my first 40. With my cousins, and it was the thing to do because we were cousins, and I didn't want to be the oddball out. But I know at the time, I was walking down the street to one of my cousin's house, just thinking I was going to go and have a good time, when I was approached by a couple of guys, older than myself, and they went and they tried to remove my ball cap, and I fought them off, but that's when I knew that, if I'm walking down the street now, at 12 years old, I'm going to need a helping hand, so to speak. So at that time, I got involved with, which is Eastside Brole, in my local neighborhood. I got jumped in when I was 13, and from there I just kind of spiraled on, into darker and more bigger things, as you could say. But at that point in time, I was still living with my folks. I was still, under the roof. I would sneak off at times. I would go and hide my addiction. Methamphetamine was one of my addictions for 17 years of my life. Smoking marijuana, drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes. So it was a stereotype that didn't fit my stereotype, because many people say, oh, well, you must have lived in the ghettos and in the gangs, to be in the projects. I lived down the street from the projects, but as far as, living in the gangs, it was just something where I felt that I had a way to defend myself, but that moment in that part of my life, I knew I needed help, but I looked at it in the wrong way, in the wrong perspective. And I looked at it towards, try to find a brotherhood of guys that were going to be able to have my back and have be able to take care of me at a moment's notice. But from that moment on, it just spiraled downwards, to create my testimony, which I have now.
Do you think, what is it? Do you think it's just young men and young women looking for that sense of companionship, sense of friendship that lead them into maybe joining a gang?
It comes to a point where you get so many people in a certain situation. Like I said, I found myself that, hey, you know what? I got people that are, that are trying to come against me, well, I need somebody that's going to help me come against them as well. So, there's always a certain amount of people, especially in my neighborhood, where I started finding out, through my, what I was relating with, that we all had sort of a similar story, and we were all looking at each other to help each other out, to have our backs. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say you needed a helping hand, it seems like it's the easy solution to when you say you got jumped and you say, "Oh man, I need some muscle with me," or something like that. That seems to be where people would naturally turn.
Right. And it comes to a point, where we find out that, that brotherhood or the sisterhood that we think that we're looking for, and that helping hand becomes the main part of our problems. Because as you start to help them out, well, of course, they're going to want something else in return, for their help. So it was a lifestyle that at the time seemed right, but in the long run, it wound up being the beginning of a bad story.
And so, for people who may not know, what do you think about gang life? When you hear the term gang life, what does that mean?
Gang life, to me, you're all in. You don't have a choice, whether you want to take the day off. You don't have a choice whether you want to say no. You don't have a choice whether, I don't feel like, I got stories in my past that, that I've kept to myself for a long time. A lot of hurt and harm that I've done to other people, and I stop and I think about it now, and I think about it, well, that was somebody's son. That was somebody's, that was somebody's brother. That was somebody's husband, and I stop now and I think about the lifestyle that I chose, and like I said, it was just a lifestyle that I thought that was just going to help me out at that time. But later on, as it began to affect, not just my life, but who I was becoming, you become somebody that you don't even want to be honest with you. In my homes, in my house, I didn't have mirrors. I never put up mirrors because I didn't like to see the person that I had become. I would always just frown away from having to look at my own image, because I knew that I had become somebody who I knew that I really wasn't deep down inside. And, I ask a lot of people, and I know, deep down inside, from when I preach in the county jails, from running men's homes and women's homes, I ask everybody, how many people wear a fictional mask? How many people, are covered up, and I've preached in county jails, I've preached in prisons, and, the people with the more tattoos that they have, the hardest look that they have on them, I ask, really, really, if you could remove those tattoos, if you could remove that mask, who would you really say you are? And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how many people would say, I am nothing of what I look like in the outside, but because of the lifestyle I grew up with or the choices that I made, I've had to make myself into this person, so that people don't ask how you're feeling, how are you doing, are you hurting today? So the more harder you try to, become, is really more of what you're trying to protect from what's deep down inside.
And when you're that age, when you're so young, like you said, you were 12, 13 years old, you're never really thinking in the long term. It's always, how can I fix this problem right now? What's the fastest way to do it?
Never. You're never thinking about, when you're going to have kids, or you're never thinking about, what are my kids going to think about it when I get older? And, that's kind of where I'm at today, where I'm after 10 years of being in Imperial Valley Ministries and now branching off to Brownsville Restoration Church, my ultimate goal is to reach out to people who are not just my age, but younger people as well, to let them know that, one day you're going to have kids. One day you're going to have children. You're going to have great-grandchildren. Are you really going to want, them to live the lifestyle, that you've lived? I God forbid, that my kids ever go through the lifestyle that I've gone through. And that's why I'm here dedicating my life, dedicating my family's life, to help other families, because, I don't want my kids pushing dope. I don't want my kids being locked up. I don't want my kids, having to do something where they're going to regret later. I got stab wounds all over my body. I got tattoos on my back. I don't show it on my arms, but I got many, many stories of my life, where I just think about my kids. I have one that's 9 right now, one that's 6, and I don't want them, trafficking drugs. I don't want them pushing dope. I don't want them being locked up. I don't want them house hopping, for not knowing where they're going to sleep at night, So that's why I've dedicated my life. I've dedicated my life and the life of my families, to help other kids, who are my age. We just had a little girl, I hope I don't, take running too long, but we just had a little girl not too long ago. Her parents took her over. She was 12 years old. And they were catching her already smoking marijuana. So they took her over to the house to get some testimonies from her sisters in the home, to try to find out, what's causing her to experiment with this, and it came down, at the end of the story where she was upset with her parents, and I told her, that's fine that you're upset with your parents, oh, well, my dad is a preacher, my dad preaches the gospel, my dad, but he's not walking, what it is. And I said, that's fine. You cannot take your problems out, on God. You're mad at your parents. Yes, you're mad at your parents, but you're not realizing what effect that you're doing right now is going to affect you in the long run. Mm-hmm. Later on, your kids are going to be coming at you the same way that you're coming at your parents. They're going to be using the exact same excuse that they're using on that you're using for your parents. They're going to use on you. And it was a breakdown to hear, this 12-year-old little girl, that she was already starting to experiment of going with friends. And I said, what, at my age, we were looking for people your age, to be able to hang out with us. And, you don't know what they're putting in the drugs and that you're smoking. You don't know what they're, what other people's intentions are. You don't know how, people are thinking towards you because they got this fresh little girl onto the streets now, how they're going to be able to use you. So it was really sad, to hear, that there are still people, that age that are experimenting. And I know that, we have to continue to push harder into these streets. That's my ultimate goal here.
Yeah, and it seems like it's very difficult because at that age, it's a curious mind. When you're that age, you want to try new things, and you want to, whether that be, activities or drugs, you're very curious. And so it's difficult to take that out of a young child when that's kind of how their mindset is very much curiosity. But it also is scary because, like you said, you didn't necessarily grow up in the projects. So this can really happen to anybody. The gang life can hit anybody, or, becoming addicted to drugs can really hit anybody.
Yeah. And drugs doesn't pertain to just one race. It's not just, because you're Mexican, because you're black, or because you're Indian, or because, you have a problem with drugs addicts. I remember we were evangelizing in Phoenix. We were in Phoenix, Arizona. We're about to open up a church. And we were in the city of Scottsdale. And I remember we were passing out flyers and we're praying for people. And we're in this parking lot. And this woman comes up to us and she says, yes, 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 yes. She goes, finally, there's people that are going to be looking beyond, the masks of everybody here in Scottsdale. And they said, because a lot of these people would rather hush up people from finding out that their kids are drug addicts than to actually trying to solve the problem that's at hand. And it was really sad to see. She says, you don't know how many people around here, their kids are drug addicts, but because they have money, they want to shush it from the community, from the public finding out, so that their reputation, their image isn't blackened. I said it, and it doesn't matter what age, what race you are, drugs are out there. Drugs are going to be out there. They're going to continue to be out there. And that's the sad fact that nowadays, being so close to a border town, that's why, being from El Centro, from the Imperial Valley, I grew up in Brawley. I know that a border town has just amount of effect that, that it is up in the States. Being so close to the border town, there's drugs constantly coming in. No matter what city you're, whether it's right here in Brownsville, McAllen, whether it's Harlingen, whether it's, Corpus Christi, being so close, there's going to be drugs. And if we're not educating our children, if we're not letting them know, the possibilities, of what we've experienced, experimented with, they could wind up in the same route as well.
Yeah, they definitely could. And so what would you say are some big misconceptions about people who join gangs, or the people who, you're watching a news report and you see somebody who's all tatted up? Because it sounds like what you're saying is the biggest misconception is they really don't want to be there.
Right. For many years, being in institutionalized, living the gang life, just being out in the streets, house hopping, not knowing where I was going to sleep at, not knowing who I was going to be with. Once you're in, you figure you have a satisfaction of knowing that you're always going to have somebody there with you. You're always going to have somebody to call a brother, or, to be able to have a helping hand. But the gang life misconception is that, not everybody's, not everyone's going to be there with you at all times. I've spoken to many people, not just from, my local neighborhood, but from, like I said, preachings in the county jails, knowing that if just about every person that has joined a gang, got in it for a sense of to belong to something, to be able to be accepted by a certain a group, or, media promotes, that, that you're gonna be able to, have connections or ties to something greater than what you already have. But in reality, that's all seems to, have a false ending. It's, the movies are great. The movies that you see on TV, they're great, but that's basically what it is. It's a movie. Mm-hmm. It's made to make money. It's made to get people's attention. But if you stop to think about the real lifestyle, of gangs, we're all trying to gain a sense of territory that doesn't even have our name at the end of the night. Mm-hmm. We're always fighting for something that doesn't even really belong to us at the end of a fight. So I mean, it does come to, to a fact that, you're fighting for something that doesn't even really belong to you anyways. And like I said, I've worked with a lot of people. I've spoken to a lot of people. I've lived it myself. It's just something that, it's a sense of wanting to belong to a certain group of people, but at the end of the night, through experience, when I had my boy taken away, all the people that said they'd have my back, all the people that said that they were going to be with me till the end, and all these people that said that, that they were going to leave my side, after the drugs ran out, after the money ran out, after my family got split apart, nobody was there with me. Mm-hmm. Nobody was there with me. Nobody was there to say, hey, you know what, everything's going to be all right. I turned around and I looked, and, I was back to an empty apartment when, my apartment was a place to be, every single night. Every person that knew anybody was going to be at my pad. But, at the end of the rodeo, nobody was there with me, and it's a sad thing to be able to look back upon. But I know what experiences that I've gone through, was something that God was allowing me to go through, so that I would be able to be a testimony to other people who were going to be in my situation or be in my shoes one day, so that they know what mistakes not to make.
Yeah, and it seems like at such a young age, because even if you've only been in the gang for just a few years, you're still 14, 15, 16 years old, and that can be kind of a rude awakening to have nobody be there for you at such a young age. So does that trickle down into the rest of your life when you have that, I guess, rude awakening so early on?
Most obviously. I know that I was 29 years old when I first came into, to the church, and I went back and I told the big homies, I said, you know what, I got I explained them the situation, I got my kid taken away. I got, the CPS got involved. And I told them, I'm going to go get mine. I'm going to go get what's mine. And they said, you know what? That's fine. Go handle what you got to handle, but let it not be mistaken that don't just go and, gangs has one thing in mind. If you don't use, don't use God, as a cop out. Don't use the things of God. Don't use the church as a cop out of trying to escape what the gang life. So yeah, they told me go handle yours, grab your kid back, but let it be known that if you're playing with God and you're just using it to try to weasel your way out of it, you know what you got coming. I said, no, of course, I just want to go get my kid back, and at the end, we had our talks, and it was surprising to hear that there was a few of the big homies that said, if you could stay there, stay there. If you could serve God and get your family back, by all means, we got your back. And that was like a eyebrow lifter, because to me, I was like, okay, and later on, about 5 months later, after I was in the church, I went back to my neighborhood and I gave them my report. I gave them, okay, I got this going on. I got a couple more months before I get my kid back. And they said, you know what, Friedman, just continue to keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of you. You're sticking it out. That's something that, I wish that we could have done, but, it's built into a lifestyle that, once you're in, like I said, you're in, and there's only two ways out, and, I remember when I got my son back and I went and I let him know that I got my kids back, and they said, you know what, I'm proud of you, little homie, just keep up the good work, but the surprising moment at the time was when they asked, can you pray for me? Mm-hmm. Can you pray for us? And to me, that was like an honor, that was like a privilege. Like I could be used more in the things of God than I was able to be used as an instrument out in the street, as far as, to be able to reach more people, not just in my own neighborhood, but in neighborhoods all around the country and all around, the cities, so I thought that it was pretty cool. That was an open eye, when they asked for that, because I said, you know what, I can pray for you, let me pray for you. So that's when I kind of got more into the set of, do I really want to go to the left when I could go to the right here? Mm-hmm. That was one of those forks in my life that I realized that, what, maybe I could do good better for myself and my family if I went to the right instead of always going to the left, which seemed more comfortable for me.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the keys is going down the path that you're used to, or going down to the path that you've lived for a majority of your life is definitely the easier path to take. But once you make that harder decision, it can be well worth it.
Amen. I've always told my men and the women's in the homes, it's a lot easier, to do drugs than it is to quit drugs. It's a lot easier, to fall into sin than it is to, stay righteous. Everything in this world that was conformed, the enemy has always, given us a sense of the reversal. Everything that seems so good for us is actually really bad, for us, and everything that seems so right for the flesh is really wrong for the spirit, but what's really right for the spirit is wrong for the flesh, Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it gives us a sense of an idea of the spiritual warfare that we fight every day, not just, in the spiritual, but also in the carnal, to understand that, that there is an opportunity for you to change your life. We all have choices. We all have choices in our life. We all have, we all have that. At the end of the day, we have the decision that we can make for our own selves. I preached about that yesterday at service. I tell people, you have the choice whether you want to wake up in a good mood. You have the choice whether you want to, go out there and have a great day. You have a choice every day whether you want to do something good for yourself and for your family and for God. But that's a choice that we have to make every day.
And you bring up a really interesting point about people who live in the gang life, or people who are addicts, when you say that they use God as an excuse. What do you mean by that?
There's many people that try to use the church as a way to hide out from many problems that they may have encountered. Especially in the system, a lot of people, that get locked up. It's a lot easier to serve God when one is bound. I tell a lot of people, it's easy to find God, when you're institutionalized. But the key is, not just finding God when you're institutionalized, but also when you get out. A lot of people want to hide behind God, in institutions and in the county jails, to avoid certain situations, being untouchable, as far as, that brother, you can't, we can't do nothing to him because he's serving God. The gang life, we give people that respect. If they want to serve God, okay, we're going to allow you to serve God, but the moment that we find out that you're just using God because, you don't want to pay your dues, or you don't want to, do what, is asked for you to do, then later on down the line, when we find out that you're back into, everything, there's politics and everything. There's politics and everything. There's politics in gangs. There's politics in the country. So I mean, everybody's watching everybody, and when a person decides, okay, well, I'm gonna leave the gang life, or I'm gonna leave this lifestyle, to serve God, it better be that they want to serve God. But a lot of people say, okay, well, I'm gonna serve God, because I'm being put in a situation that I don't want to get my hands dirty with, or I'm afraid that it's gonna, cause me to do something, that I don't want to do, But as far as, using God as a way out, a lot of the gangs, they frown on that. They frown on the fact that you want to, use it as a way to not have to do what your dues are called to do. And once you get out, oh, you're back to the gang life. No, it doesn't work that way. Either you stay in and plugged into the church, or you stay plugged into the gangs. And, I thank God that, God gave me an opportunity to see that light. I thank God that He gave me an opportunity, through the lifestyle that I have lived, to be able to serve God, and to give Him my 100%. The reason, I begin to ponder and imagine upon, what if I wouldn't have chose God, or what if God wouldn't have chose me, the lifestyle that I would have right now, even more, not just for myself, but the lifestyle that my kids would be seeing me grow up as in right now as well.
What do you think would have happened?
There's only a couple of things that could have happened. I mean, like I said, I've been shot at, I've been stabbed. I thank God for the grace of the Holy Spirit, that I'm not in a penitentiary serving life. I'm not, dead. First and foremost, we think about that. Not just anybody that has to be in a gang, can wind up dead, through gang violence. It's something that I know that if I would still be out there, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be, enjoying, my kids right now. I would be behind bars. They would have to be visiting me through a glass window. I would be either that, or they'd be visiting my gravesite. So I know that, that kind of lifestyle, where it would have taken me.
And when you're helping people at the church, when you're helping people who are in gangs, or have problems with drugs, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that they face when they're either taking their first step, or when they're just trying to get their life on the right track?
Believing in themselves. Believing in themselves, because many times we get put in situations, a stereotype, that we're not wanted. That you're rejected by society, you're rejected by your family, because that's very hurtful, when you're living a lifestyle that you're using drugs to numb your problems. Now, when you start putting problems on top of problems, now you're putting drugs on top of drugs to try to remove that hurt, or that rejection, or that lifestyle that you may have encountered, from the choices that we've been making, So I know that you have to believe in yourself. You have to give yourself some sort of credit, some sort of satisfaction, some sort of self-worth, to let you know that you are somebody. Many times, we get beaten down, by society, or by just stereotypes that, we're never going to be somebody. But you could always be somebody, especially in Christ. You could always be somebody. God has obviously held a hand of protection upon our lives. Not just to be called by God, but to be used by God. To be a lamp unto many people who are in darkness right now. So if anybody that's listening, to my message, to these words, you are valuable in the kingdom of God. You are somebody. you have some value, whether it seems like it or not. You have some self-worth, that God could use. Like I said, yesterday's service, I spoke about, making your choices and that you are loved, and, you got to be able to keep your head up like you believe that you're being loved, because many times we're our worst enemy. We're the ones that condemn ourselves. We're the ones that put ourselves down. Like I said, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror, until I came into the home. Why? Because I didn't like who I was becoming. I didn't like what I saw, but somebody saw something different in me, and that's one thing that we have to understand into grasping yourself is that, in the homes, the hardest part of getting somebody to recovery, is that, they have to be able to know that they're worth something, that they're not just, the rejects, the lowest of the lowest, the worst of the worst, the dirtiest of the society, maybe a lifestyle that they've portrayed, but they have their choice whether to want to pick themselves up or not. They have a choice whether they want to, make a decision to turn to the right instead of the left.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it, because I think what people who are living really healthy lives, really successful lives don't realize is, one thing my dad always taught me was, there but for the grace of God go I, because you're about one or two circumstances from being in that same exact position.
Right. It doesn't take much to change your life around. It take too much to be able to make just that quality decision to want to make that change. And like I tell everybody in the homes, you just have to want it. The life experiences that you've lived, in your own life, you have to be able to use that to help your life in the future. If you're tired of being tired, you're going to do whatever they tell you to do, whatever it takes for you to do, in the things of God, to be able to get back what has been totally, taken away from you, everything that's been totally destroyed. Your families have been totally separated and spread out. It's your choice how bad you want it. Mm-hmm. How bad do you really want something? And that goes with in anything you do in life, how bad you really want something. Like I said, I've endured many things in the streets. I've endured many things in jails. I've endured many things, as an adolescent growing up, problems. But one thing that was the hardest thing was, having my kid taken away. My son was not even a week old when he was taken away by CPS. Mm-hmm. So I had him for not even 7 days in my arms. When marshals were already banging at the door, with their guns drawn, flashlights out, and, bulletproof vests, when they're already taking my son. And, I know that was, to me, that was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to endure, and that's when I really said, you know what, I really got to do something different with my life.
What is, when you're helping all of these people trying to recover, has there ever been a story that has really affected you more than others?
There's nothing in these days that surprised me. Every person has a story. Every person has a testimony. There's nothing as far as, that I haven't heard something from somebody. Typical lifestyles. I tell people to this day, there's when you hear somebody's testimony, a lot of people say, well, that sounds like my story, that sounds like my life, and that sounds like, in reality, it is a lifestyle that we lived, and nothing really changes over the numbers except for the equation. Maybe you got pregnant earlier, than other people. Maybe you got your kids taken later than other people. But the equation is still there. But at the overall, the answer has to be the same. It has to be that you want to change your life, and it has to be something where that you yourself, I myself, couldn't change on my own. I have to let people know that if we try to do it on our own, by our own selves, our own strength and our own understanding, it's not going to happen.
When you go down the path of self-improvement, I imagine one of the biggest fears, I know I've faced this too, if I've ever tried to, improve myself, maybe not on that same level, but one of the biggest fears is that you're letting a former self die. that it's hard to see a side of you, whether it's good or bad, die off.
As seeing yourself improve, of course you want to keep the tools that are going to help you continue to improve. A lot of people say, well, why do you glorify the devil, by keep repeating about your drug use and your gang life and, you're being institutionalized. Why do you glorify the devil? And I tell people, I don't glorify the devil, or the enemy, by bringing back my past, so long as I'm using it for a righteous reason. A lot of people say, you got to let your past be the past and, to gain the future, but it's my past that's going to be the tools to let people, know that, that it is possible for a change. And here's an example. If I go to the park, the way that I'm dressed, say I'm dressed in a suit and tie and I'm carrying a briefcase and I go in and try to preach the gospel to somebody out in the streets, they're going to turn around and they're going to walk away. But if I go the way that I was brought up, the lifestyle that I was, transformed, but I mean, I still have the habits of wearing Dickies, and, that's one thing that I've always kept. I wear my Dickie shorts, and but that's what's going to use myself to be able to accommodate other people who were in my situation. It's like I tell a lot of people, if I would have been approached, by a therapist, and tell me, hey, sit down on this leather couch, and I'm gonna sit right here behind my desk right here, and I'm gonna get this notepad, I'm gonna take notes, and I'm gonna ask you a series of questions, and as I'm listening to this guy explain all this to me, my mind would have been like, this guy knows nothing about what I'm about to explain to him. So I know that I wouldn't be taking this kind of person seriously, because I know that this guy, probably never had an experience, being locked up, had never been experienced, in a knife fight or a gunfight, or, having being rushed before, so my mind would have just completely shut him down, but as I grew up in a lifestyle where people, that I could relate to, came upon me, to preach the gospel and let them know that, that a person of 20 years could be changed of the drug addiction. That's what caught my attention, to be able to relate to somebody who's been in my shoes, that's been in my situation, to, casually, overall affect, how I'm taking my situation, in serious. So like I said, when we go to the parks and we go to the alleys and we preach the gospel, we pass out flyers, I let people know, be yourself, but at the same time, let them know the transformation that God's done in your life. Yeah, when I get upset, when I get, a little bit riled up, yeah, the homie and the S and the vato comes out of me, and, I have to stop myself, and I have to, go back into, my training as far as, what God would want me to represent him as, but, I still have my old bad habits that I have sometimes. I just use them now for the greater good of the kingdom of God.
Yeah, like you said, those are the tools you're using to help somebody who's having a hard time in life. And maybe that's how you relate to them. Maybe, like you said, if you're wearing a suit and you walk down an alleyway, people would shy away from you. But if you approach them looking similar to how they look, they're more accepting or welcoming to the message that you're preaching.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, it's something that it's been proven to work. I know when I go back to my old barrio and I go out there to the handball courts, and when we go street blasting and we would pass out flyers, I would see the little homies that I would see when I was in the gang life, and even in the county jails when I was preaching, and half of the group that I was preaching to knew me, who I was in the streets, so they took a sense of okay, well, this guy isn't lying. This guy isn't, just, trying to waste my time, because I was actually there with this vato, when everything was going down. So I know that if, a lot of people, they know me as a big head and the skinny body, as drugged up as I was, as a dolphin as I was. They remember me like a pit bull size head with the skinny body. and they remember how it's like an orange on a toothpick, so to speak, but a lot of people, they're really impressed, and they say, just keep it going, keep doing what you're doing. A lot of them, they knew that I was moving to Brownsville, from California. They were like, hey, well, just, if there's any way to represent your barrio, what better way than to do it with Jesus? Mm-hmm. So when they told me that, hey, the best way to represent the Valle, from the Valle Imperial, a lot of people want to represent it in the, in the prison system or in the county jails, but what better way to do it, when you're doing it for Jesus?
And to really have that message, yeah. Is there ever a point where people are so far in deep that they are, and I feel like the answer is no, but at some point I feel some people can be lost and just lost for good. Is there ever a point where that hits?
There comes a point where, of course, drugs mess up people differently in the minds. Mm-hmm. I've had homegirls that had just for the first time they picked up, they smoked a joint, and their chemical imbalance just had them just all off. And it's like I like that. Back to the scenario of the 12-year-old little girl, I told her, you don't know how that substance is going to affect your mind. Nobody knows. Everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to, be high and I'm going to be happy and I'm going to enjoy myself. But not everybody knows how it's going to affect you. There's a lot of people nowadays that, they're coming in, and I mean, mental health is mental health, and, drug addiction with mental health, that's a totally, fine line. But there's a lot of people right now that are being called into the program, or they're calling, asking information, but a lot of them are under the medication right now, because either they tried experimented drugs and it didn't affect them the way that they thought it was going to affect them. And now, so to speak, they burnt a few fuses, and, now they're living a life where they got to continually take medication for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's some people that all people could change so long as they want to change. Now there's just, there's people that now they need not just, the change in their life, but they need that medication to stabilize, their mental awareness as well.
Yeah. And, there are people who also, they have to take medication and they have to have a caregiver, almost 24/7. And it's, man, it just kind of breaks down the family unit, I think. Does there ever come a point where people are so broken that maybe they don't want the help anymore? They just say, even if after they've been trying, they say, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
We see it all the time. We see it all the time. There's people that have been, bound for so many years, either addiction or a certain lifestyle, that the hardest part of a job of a pastor, the hardest part of somebody that does what I do, is that we could want it for them all day long. We could want the change for them. We could want, have that high spirit and that high hopes for them. We could pray for them constantly. And every day, just continue to motivate them. But at the end of the day, it's a choice that they have to make. It's a choice that they have to make. And, it's kind of hard, because like I said, we could want it. We could want the change for people because we've experienced the change. We've experienced the miracle, that we saw the other side of the fence, the other side of the yard, so to speak, and we want exactly what God's given us. We want for them. We want it, and we want it for them. We want it for them. But at the end of the night, the end of the day, they have to be the ones that, I see it like this. You have to do the natural in order for God to do the supernatural in your life. Okay? You have to be able to put your part in order for God to be able to do his part. But some of us, some people that I've encountered, there's a lot of people that, they've been so beaten down and they've been so broken down that they feel like they're constantly going to be in a battle, but they don't, as much as I want it for them, they don't want it for themselves as much as, I want it for them. That's the hard part of doing what we do. is seeing that there's a lot of people with potential to do great and mighty things, not just for God, but for themselves and their family, but they don't see that breakthrough in their life. They don't see that there's hope for them, that there is a lifestyle that's completely different from the lifestyle that they've been brought up and learned to live with, than just, being out there, prostituting themselves, not just out there, just walking the streets, pushing a shopping cart, and not knowing that there's a greater life for them if they could just want it for themselves just a little bit more than what they're giving themselves credit for.
I would imagine, and you're obviously a man of very strong faith, but is there ever come a point where, you see so many cases that are similar, and then you see success stories, and then you see stories that don't pan out so well, where a part of you just gets so frustrated where you just say, don't you see what you're doing to yourself? You just kind of get so fed up with the situation or the pattern that's sort of developed through generations?
Right. It's at no time have I ever lost my faith in knowing that God could do miracles, great signs and wonders upon a person's life. It's the point of, going back to biblical scriptures, where it says, sometimes we got to give them back to Satan, basically in layman's terms and easy words. Sometimes we got to let them go back to, have another round at the world in order to maybe break them down just a little bit more so that they could be able to realize that, your time is up. Hang up the boots. It's like I put up a little slot at the church, where people could spiritually just hang up their boots already, just hang up their gloves, just turn themselves just to be able to just give it all to God. I mean, I truly believe, that if you think that if for the people that come into our program, I let them know that if you think that you could do it upon your own strength or your own understanding or your ways or your plans, we still got it. We still got some time left in the world to go have at it. I go, but when you're coming into a program, you have to be totally 100% broken down, hit rock bottom, to be able to say, I can't do it upon my own strength anymore, which is what faith is to be able to build you up when you feel like you can't, is to be able to, help you up when, you're constantly being broken down, and I know firsthand, not just myself, but my wife, was a drug addict, I was a drug addict for 17 years of my life, in every drug that you could possibly think of, that I was using, to be able to come here and be able to give a life. And, I'm giving interviews now, when back in the days when I was sleeping in the slide at the parks, because I didn't have nowhere to sleep at, is a great idea, great understanding of the miracle that God could do in a person's life.
When you look at all the cases that you've of people that you've helped, where do you see that first breakdown of structure in life that leads somebody down the wrong path? Where is that first sign that something's going to break?
I honestly believe that somebody that has that final giving up, to throw in the towel, is when the family finally gives up on them. Because many times people say, well, the family's, not helping them enough, or the family is not striving to help them out anymore. But as a drug addict, we love resources. We love resources. A drug addict loves enabling parents. We love people that want to help out. We've evangelized and we've passed out flyers in San Diego, downtown San Diego, and people love to be homeless in San Diego. They love to be, not only that is the weather great, but every day they have different churches and groups that go and take them lunch sacks, sleeping bags, pillows, constantly every day. So every day they're getting fresh stuff, so it's not until the point where you see somebody say, what, people stopped helping me, is when they say, what, where they finally want to allow somebody else to help them. Because when you're constantly getting help from other people, well, there's no real reason to want to change. There's no really reason why, why should I want to stop using drugs? If, I got people bringing me lunch every day. I got people bringing me dinner every day. I got people to help me out and bringing me fresh clothes and a place to shower every day. Why do I really want to change?
In their eyes, they view it as, I can live a pretty decent life just doing what I want and getting things for free. Yeah,
exactly. Resources, and it wasn't to a point, where I found out where people either they burn out their resources, either they caused a fight at that shelter, they caused a fight, under that bridge, or they got locked up, or whatever it is, where they burnt their resources. And when they finally said, "Oh, I'm out of places to try to help me out," is when they finally said, "Oh, okay, fine." Because how many of us know that, drug addicts, people in the street, we don't like rules. We don't like rules. We don't like discipline.
Forget drug addicts. Nobody likes rules.
It's like a sense of, they want to be. That's why a lot of us, we stayed homeless. That's why a lot of us, we left, home early, because we didn't want to live by our parents' rules. We didn't want to come home at a time where we wanted to come home. We wanted to hang out with who we wanted to hang out with. And same thing even out in the streets. We don't like people telling us what to do, when to do it, where to do it, and how to do it. So even in the church or in recovery, it's kind of hard to be able to, hold people. And I let people know in my church. I go, you know what? This isn't a shelter. It's not a flop house. It's not a halfway home. It's not going to be, somewhere where you're just going to be able to, kick off your shoes and, change the channel for me. No, it's not going to work like that. Structure is something that nobody wants, but we all need. Discipline is something that we lost control of a long time ago. In our lives, is why we're in the situation that we're in.
How does the legal system play into all of this? Because we always hear about how the courts and everything have become just an assembly line. It's become, okay, next case, and it's just a matter of pushing the problem onto somebody else. Is there problems in the legal system as well?
In the Imperial Valley, where I'm from, I'm barely starting to get familiar with the court systems here in Texas. But I mean, I've sat in a couple of courts the last couple months that I've been here, and I'm not one to say that people are being pushed off into different programs, but obviously, the different programs are different opportunities for different people. I know that pretty much all the programs here in whether in Texas or California, they're meant to build some structure or foundation for a person, but like I said, drug addicts, we love resources. Even where I'm from, there's people that are institutionalized that love to use the system, where they know that they could just be bouncing from home to home to home to home until either their parole's up or their probation's up, or to, find their ways where, a lot of programs, they go fundraising. In other words, they support our ministry by going out there and picking up finances for their church. With people that know the system as far as recovery homes or programs, they know that they could at least sleep for the first 30 days, and just kick back and until their grace period's up. And then they'll go and let their PO know, hey, you know what, this program didn't work for me, to get transferred to another program where they could do another 30 days of just kicking back. And, so I mean, it's not really the system's fault. It's more in the lines of knowing who you're dealing with.
And people knowing the loopholes.
Exactly. I mean, I'm one that if they could have called me loopy, they would probably call me loopy, because I found an excuse for everything. I found a way to manipulate the system, or I was one of those people that I wouldn't really show it, but in my mind I was already plotting my next moves. I love playing chess. Playing chess. And, you got to be 3-4 steps ahead of the person. And that's the way I was. I'm very quiet, but at the same time my mind's always moving, and I truly believe, that, the system's doing what it can for what it knows. The judicial system is really trying to keep an open mind, for people who are saying that they want the help. It's just, the laws that kind of affect what we can and what we can't do with the person. That's the kind of, touchy subject that we're not allowed to talk about too much, But at the same time, we have to know that, like in our ministry, we in our church, there's so much that we could help them with, but, if they don't want the help, well, then we can't help them out. There's a lot of fine rules and fine lines, as far as, making a person stay. They have to be there because they want to be there. At no time are we, forcing people to be there. They got to be there. And at the same time, I do understand, that's how God wants it. God doesn't want somebody to force them, to serve him. So I mean, everybody has to be there because they want to be there, because they're tired of being tired. Of course, we're gonna always get those, those few, 1 or 2 or 3 or 5, people that are gonna want to just kind of, take advantage of the system. But at the same time, our ministry rules have been, purposely put there, to weed out those that aren't really there to serve God.
Well, the legal system's also dealing with, it's not like they're dealing with 1,000 or 2,000 cases or something. They're dealing with tens or hundreds of thousands of cases constantly. It's just an endless supply of these, stories that have fallen apart for people. So it's difficult for them because they have to manage every case, but then at the same time, they have to manage every case as best they can on an individual level.
Right. According to their progress and their background and, on their behalfs. I just, I would just really, being that we just barely got to Texas, we just got invited to start filling out the paperwork for the county jail here in Carrizales. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about that. We just got interviewed by the chaplain here in Carrizales at the county jail. I'm touching bases with the sergeant back in California, so he could give him a recommendation, on our behalfs. So we could start going in there and judges could start seeing our faces as well, letting people know that we are here in Brownsville. We're just another resource that we could be used as another tool to be used as to help people along. Like I said, I'm familiar with county jails. I'm familiar with drug addicts, gangbangers, dope fiends, so we're here to help out.
Yeah, for sure. And do you ever do any work across the border by chance?
We did in California. We have 5 churches. As far as Ensenada, we had a TJ, we have a Mexicali. We have 2 churches in TJ, 1 in Ensenada. So we have churches not only in the United States but also in Mexico. Right now, since we've been here since August, we're barely starting across. Little by little. We started seeing around the areas. To see what more of a helping hand we could do also in Mexico on this side as well.
Is there a difference in the type of help you need to offer to people across the border versus here in terms of culture?
Not necessarily. As a matter of fact, I find that in Mexico, there's a bigger hunger and necessity for God than there is in the United States. As just speaking from conferences that we've had, crusades that we've had, there's a lot of people that are hungry, in Mexico for just that opportunity, that a lot of people here in the United States take for granted. I've seen some churches in Mexico where, it was a luxury to have a running toilet, or just, to be able to have 3 meals every day, so it's like, we would actually send people, from our ministry, people that would seem like they were taking advantage of our church. We would send them to the Mexico churches, just to go visit.
Really?
Not to stay there or to make them, live there, but we would take them just so they could see that, that they look at the advantage that we have that we're taking for granted over the people who really don't have an opportunity, to change over there. I've seen some. I mean, you hear some stories of Mexico and their shelters and their rehabs and their recovery homes. They're not playing around.
Yeah,
they're not stories. It's actually true. So with our recovery homes and our restoration homes in Mexico, I see that to be able to have those luxuries that we take as for granted, is something good. Another eye opener for these people as well.
Gosh, that sounds like it's boot camp for people who are trying. You said you think it's bad here, just walk 15 minutes down the road and you'll see a different story. So we did about an hour. Today. No, thank you so much for coming on. It was like I said, when I saw the story on you, I really wanted to talk to you and delve more into what it meant to grow up in maybe harsher situations and touch on the church. And how can people get a hold of your church?
We have our email is BVRC BVR Church. I'm sorry. BVRchurch@gmail.com. We have our number on the flyer is 1-956-559-0000. We made that number as easy as possible.
Yeah.
We're also going to be hopefully within the next couple of months, so we're going to be putting a toll-free number. that we found that worked very well in California, because as drug addicts we have an excuse, even excuses as far as, oh, I didn't have money to pay for a phone call, even though they're giving out the Obama phones and Trump phones. I don't know what they're calling them now, but even with free phones, they have an excuse of why they can't call the number. So we made it as easy as possible. So just remember the 559-0000. That's the perfect way to get a hold of us. I just recently, through your colleague, I just opened up the Brownsville Restoration Church on Facebook. I'm still barely putting in. He said he was going to try to help me out. Try to form it and everything.
Oh, yeah?
I haven't got back to him yet about it. But there's a lot of people that they're skeptical. I know there was a lot of promises maybe about 10, 15 years back. About a church being open here named Brownsville Restoration Church, and there's other churches that use our symbol. They use the crown. But they're not affiliated with us. But there's a lot of people that were really like, oh, you guys are the church that promised you guys were going to be here 10 years back. I said, well, I don't know how far back they promised you, but I just know that I just got launched out this past
You haven't even been here that long.
So I mean, it's I love a challenge. I love a challenge, even though it's great to have resources, to be able to help get us out there. But our biggest is word of mouth. Word of mouth. The flyer that we pass out. We're not just beggars out in the streets. We're actually testimonies, of people who have lived a lifestyle. You don't. It's like I tell the people in the home. Every flyer you pass out maybe not touch the actual drug addict or alcoholic. But somebody in their family is gonna have problems. So don't hesitate to pass out as many flyers as you can.
Yeah, really get the word out.
Yeah.
Sir, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, not at all.
All right, thank you. All right, again, you are watching the Straight Shooter Podcast. Remember, we are less formal, but more informed. Thanks for joining us.